Amen. So in our last class we were looking at the original intent of inspiration and application. And I think it's a really important concept that we need to become more familiar with. More and more, if you watch presentations or go to watch classes, you'll see this emphasis being made more and more. That in the past, when we've read portions of Scripture or Spirit of Prophecy, we've thought that the original intent was this, whatever the this was, and now we're beginning to realise that actually sometimes it isn't that straightforward. So I gave an example from Leviticus 26. Remember, one side says duration and one side says intensity. And I'm suggesting it's the original application, it's dealing with intensity. And our opponents will say, we were right, you people don't know what you're talking about, you're wrong. So, we're willing to admit when we've understood things in an incorrect way, we're willing to learn. But what I find interesting is that when we consider the application and then the original intent, our message goes from strength to strength. It doesn't weaken. So people will look upon this mistake that we've made, if that's the way you want to express it, as an admission of guilt. And I don't see it that way. I see it as a recognition that our movement, our understanding of these truths has strengthened.
Increase of knowledge.
We have an increase of knowledge. So now we see intensity, we say, yeah, it's intensity. And we're going to take that concept of intensity and bring it into a reform line. We might call these four kings, the seven thunders, if you like. And when we start thinking about seven thunders, we see a series of events, not time, a series of events that crescendo will become more intense as we get to the very end. So, a simple example, we have 9/11, we have 2014, then we have Raffia. But even those three events are only stepping stones to the Sunday law. So we see this concept of intensity. So that's what we looked at in our last class. Now, coming back to our model here of Matthew 24, which is here, verses 29 to 31. When you start looking at these verses, what we've done in the past is say, we've got an option that it's either option 1, which is 1798 to 1844, the Millerite line, or our line, 1989 to the Second Advent, which is the 144,000 line, or 1798 to the Second Advent, which is the third option, which I've just called Adventism. So which one of those is correct? I'm saying you could apply those things differently, but we want to understand the original intent. We've spent a lot of time now looking at verse 29 here. Sun, moon and stars, there it is, verse 29. And we know, Ellen White tells us, we don't have to misread anything or apply it in some funny way. We've got 1780 and 1833. For the purpose of this class, we're not going back and understanding what 1780 and 1833 mean. They're separate and distinct waymarks. They're not the time of the end. We agree with that. But they're events that cluster around the time of the end. Because in Matthew, Mark or Luke, it doesn't mention time at the end, does it? All it mentions is those days or the tribulation. Again, we've taken the tribulation or those days to equal what? 1260. Do we all know that that's not correct? It's not technically correct. Who doesn't know that? That means everyone knows it. Okay, so someone doesn't know that. It says in the verse, so maybe someone can find it, immediately after the tribulation of those days. Which verse is that? 29? Yeah, there it is. Immediately after the tribulation of those days, the sun shall be darkened. What year is the sun darkened? 1780. It says immediately after the tribulation. So the tribulation must have ended before you get to the dark day. Do you agree with that? And the dark day isn't 1260. It's less. It's 1260 minus 18 years. So the tribulation must have ended before. Are we okay with that? Yeah. Does that make sense? Yeah? So what we've done is we've just approximated and we've said the tribulation is 1260, the days are 1260, the sun, moon and stars are 1798. I want us all to recognise what we're doing. We're just doing it that way because we want to, our point is we want to study something else. If you want to study something else, you can make a simple point without going into the detail. So we spoke about that in the class before. Are we okay with that concept? It's not wrong to say the tribulation is 1260. In fact, if you lined up the verses, you could even make that argument that it's 1260. But technically it's not. Everybody okay with that? Yeah? So we could mark the end of the tribulation as being 1773 if we were going to be accurate. But I don't want to go there. That's not the purpose of this class. So I've marked verse 29 is 1798. And we know it's the sun, moon and stars literally. So we have that here. And then we go to verse 30 and verse 31. Here we talk about the end of the world. These are real angels, the entourage of Jesus when he comes, and they're really going to call the people with a trumpet to resurrect out of the ground. We're literally going to float up into the air. That's how we understand that. That is the second advent. So this is Revelation 1:7. What we have done in the past in this movement, we've taken that verse 30 and we said there's a cloud here. We know that 1798, this generation shall not pass. We want to make this a literal generation, a living generation. Therefore, we're going to go and make verse 30, 1844, and call it Daniel 7:13. So that's what we would normally do. And I'm saying, I'm questioning that now. We're questioning it. And as we've questioned it, what have we seen the problem is? So we've seen the problem that if this is the second advent here, however you would consider the Millerite reform line, where would October 22nd, 1844 go? Would it line up with the second advent? We know it could not have been that way. If it had been that way, Jesus would have come in October. That's the simplest evidence that we know. Besides all the doctrinal evidence that we have, the fact that he didn't come, you know that the waymarks can't line up. So we have to do this. We have to put 1044 back here. We can't line them up. And if verse 30, we could put verse 31 with it. If that's lining up with the second advent here, then October 22nd can't be an equivalent of that. Now, if we were going to follow through with the original intent, we'll go with the original question. What shall be two questions? The destruction of Jerusalem, the destruction of the world, or the end of the world. What's associated with the first question? with the destruction of Jerusalem. It's the sign of the destruction of Jerusalem, the end of the world, the sign of the end of the world. So we've got two questions, and each one is part A and part B. Now, if we were going to say that Jesus could have returned before 1888, when Ellen White makes a comment about that, then we know the Millerite history would have been the final and last generation. Therefore, we need to look for an event here, which would be the second advent when Jesus would have come. So that's what I begin to lay out here on this line. When we start doing that, I want to ask the question, are we adding waymarks onto the Millerite line? Are we adding waymarks?
Yes, we're doing.
Okay, so if you said we're adding, my brother, you said we're adding to whose understanding? Who said this was Millerite history and now we're here and we're adding to that? Who was that person over here that said this is the definition of Millerite history? We. So we're adding to ourselves. Who else said yes? Who are we adding and what we
are adding to our understanding.
Okay, so we're adding to our understanding. It's not that you go to a Spirit of Prophecy quote and that says that 1844 October was the Millerite history and it's all finished, it's all done and dusted. There's no quote like that. But what we've done is we've inferred that that is the case. And what was the primary driving force behind that made us think that this was the end? What made us think that?
Because you also borrowed their misconception that Jesus was going to come in October 1945.
Okay, we borrowed their conception that...
Conception.
Brother Kefis?
The fulfillment of the message of the hour.
Fulfillment of the message of the hour. Yep. These answers are not wrong. Brother William? Why did we focus on October the 10th? Sorry, October 1844.
Why did we focus?
Yeah. Why did we say the Millerite line ends here? Why we zoomed into that? We say it's this.
It's because that is where the message points to.
It's because the first angel's message points to this. And I think that's what Brother Kefis was... I think that's what you meant when you said that, perhaps.
I was going to add something on this.
Okay.
Also when the door is closed, the door.
So I was thinking, we're so fixated about this shut door. This shut door has driven us to say if there's a door shut, it must be the end of something. So to me, that was the primary thing that was driving us to make the line end here. One more piece of information.
2,300 days after the doctrine.
So the 2,300 years, that does it. So it's the first angel's message. So let's list them out here. First angel's message. So we've got the door there. And then the 2,300 days. Then the shut door. What else? Brother Roger spoke about it yesterday afternoon. Which passage did he take us to? John chapter 2. And in John chapter 2, what would we plug in here? 46 years. And I'm going to put 46 in parentheses because we don't care about 46. What are we caring about? Temple. So we're caring about the temple, which we're going to get from the 46 years. Let me ask a question. Does it take 46 years to build a temple? Or more? or less? Did you get my question?
Yeah, I didn't get your question.
You didn't get it? So my question is, 46 years, does it take less or 46 or more years to build a temple?
Which one?
I don't know. I went to John chapter 2 and it says 46 years is this temple being built. And we say 46 years is the symbol for building a temple.
Yeah, because if you go to the second temple, the Herodian temple, I think it takes 46 years.
Like what?
I'm saying...
You like what, you said? Oh, literally? Yeah. Okay, sorry. So I'm going to put Herod. You said Herod? Herod's temple is 46 years.
Yeah.
Yep. My brother?
Is it the temple alone? Because when I look at Solomon's temple, building his own palace in the temple, I can't remember, but I'm seeing that they are distinct.
They were distinct.
Yeah.
Solomon's house
And the temple.
and the temple. I don't know, because I just went to John 2. It said 46 years, and that's 46 years. Okay, what about another temple? Zerubbabel's temple. How long does that take? That takes 46?
No, 5
You said 46?
It takes 20 years.
20 years.
Sorry? 20. You want to go with 20? So, we've got 20 years here. Is it exactly 20 years or more or less? I don't know.
Why?
So you want to go from 5:36 to 5:16. Okay. So to cover ourselves, in case Brother Theodore's watching, which he won't be, approximately 20 years. Herod's temple, does that take 46 years? Not sure?
Yes.
I think it takes 56.
Okay, so I'm going to argue that it takes longer than 46 years. Sorry? What did you say?
I was saying that the temple ended around before the destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay, it ended, that is before the destruction of Jerusalem, but further.
What was not in the scriptures for the 60 years. But then when you read in the scripture, they say that before the destruction of Jerusalem is just to be complete.
Anyone else? Sorry?
So when you read the book of John 2:20, it says 46 years has this temple been in building, meaning it's in the process.
Okay, so once you know that it's not 46, you can go back into the verse and read it in building. It's been built. So I think it's 19 BC. It begins, and they're in 28 when that happens. And I think if you do that maths, I think it works out at 46 years. I think it's 19. But the temple continues to get built, and I think it's in 63 where it gets finished. But you can go to other commentaries where it says they were still doing some slight finishing work, even up to 66 and even up to 70. But I think the official date is it finishes in 63, which is of significance because of 1863. But sorry?
So the prophet is giving his voice for 7 years.
And the prophet, yes, that's why the 63 becomes significant, because of the 7 years. 63 to 70. And then you have a chiasm in there, because you've got 66, 3.5 and 3.5 years. So we used all of these concepts to focus on October 1844. And so when we did that, we just assumed that the line would end here. But we know that's not really correct, because the people who are here, who are going to give the third angel's message, one of the characteristics about them is that they would have had to be the same people who gave the first and second angel's messages. Ellen White has a comment about that. So I'm saying this group of people is this group of people, so this history hasn't changed. Especially if we go to Matthew 24, verse 29 and 30. This is verse 34. If we take this passage and read it as it's written and then apply it to the Millerite line, we know that it must extend further. We know that this shut door is not the end of the story of the Millerites, because they haven't even reached the third angel. What's just begun here in real life? So this is 3A. What is 3A? What's the main focus of attention at 3A on October 22nd, 1844? When you think about Daniel chapter 8. Sorry? The ministry of Christ? Who said something? Did you say someone spoke? It was you. I know it wasn't. Give me your opinion. He got you into trouble. Okay, what is 3A marking here on October 22nd, 1844? To begin what? To begin the investigative judgment of the dead. So if it's with the dead, then you have to sort of work out the living. This is when their line becomes complex, in my opinion. So I'm saying that their history hasn't finished. So even though it looks like we're adding new information, we're not really adding new information. We've had the 1850 chart in our thinking, in our focus, for a long time now. At least from 2005, if not before, when the 2520 came into prominence. So we've had it around for a long time. So if we were to put 1850, who would that be speaking of? Which reform line would that be a part of? 1850. Would it not be part of the Millerite reform line? Yeah? I think it would, and I think we've known that for a long time. But because many people have focused so much about the shut door in October, we forget that we already know there's an 1850. And what's the purpose of the 1850 chart? Sorry? So public evangelism. So if it's public evangelism, what are you saying to people? When you're evangelizing to them, what are you saying? Come out of her and come into the church of God. And who's saying that? All these people that produced the 1850 chart, if you just say James White, Ellen White, it was a vision from God, Nichols, all of these people, they've produced this chart, and this chart was the cry to go to the world, to gather them in before the great day of Armageddon. Yes? Okay. I don't know who watches these videos, but someone asked me a question, so I'm going to hold on to that thought, and I'm going to do what we shouldn't do. Sometimes I do it, is to jump out and make an application. Okay? I'm going to jump out of this story and make an application, if you're okay with that. I'm going to take the door out. Here we are, 1850. My brother said this is public evangelism. I don't know if we all agree with that. Does anybody disagree? So we're going to make public evangelism, and this is the time where we're going to do what to them? Call them out. Sorry? We're going to so I got evangelism, but what does it look like when you're going to evangelize? Someone said it here. So this is the loud cry. If we're okay with the loud cry. So I'm going to call this the loud cry. So that chart over there is going to be the cry. It's going to be the symbol. We could call it the ensign if you like, because they're going to lift it up. It's going to be the ensign that people are going to now be drawn into the church of God. Are we okay with that model, that concept? So if that's the case and that's the loud cry, let me see if I can find the passage. Otherwise I paraphrase. Okay, so I'm going to go to 13MR. 13MR 359.1. So don't read it, just find it and come back and let's have a little conversation. So feel free to look for it, but don't read it yet. 13MR 359 paragraph 1. Now this is the loud cry. So I want to change the wording from the loud cry to what? What other words do we have instead of the loud cry? My brother? No, my brother. What do we have instead of the loud cry? Sorry? Latter rain. We can put latter rain. That's a good answer. So, another one. I'm thinking of another one.
Harvest time.
Harvest time. Loud cry. Sorry?
Loud voice.
Loud voice. Think about Millerite history when you talk about the loud cry. Midnight cry. So I want to change this to the midnight cry. And if it's the midnight cry, I'm going to come back into this history, as you know, because the midnight cry is here. Here's the midnight cry. And if we're going to ask the Millerites, what date is that, Sister Emma? So this is July, if you ask a Millerite. Brother Wilson, what do we say it is? Sorry? We say it's August. So it's July for the Millerites, it's August for the 144,000. Are we all okay with that? Yeah? So, when you get to the midnight cry in August, Bates is standing up doing some boring presentation, and Samuel Snow's sister is listening to the sermon, bored, and Samuel Snow comes up and he sits next to her, excited, and she stands up and says what to Joseph Bates? Your sermons are boring, can you get down and let's have some interesting sermons? Yeah? Because you're not teaching us anything, and this person, my brother, has got something to teach us. So, did she already know about what he was teaching? Or did he tell her in about 5 seconds?
No.
Just there and then? Or did she already know?
She must have known.
I have a feeling she already knew what was going on. She already knew what he's already preached this twice before. First time, Boston. Second time, Concord. So he's already preached it. He's her brother, blood brother. Her husband is a Millerite preacher, his brother-in-law. I think she already knows. He comes there and she's like saying, you need to preach. He's saying, I can't put myself forward. She says, if you're not going to do it, I'll do it. So she stands up and tells Joseph Bates to come down. That's my version of events. So when he stands up, how many people object to what he's teaching? No one. It's a unanimous voice. He preaches the next day and everybody agrees. And then when they all leave camp, Ellen White says it goes like wildfire or something across the nation. So everyone is giving this message. So it's pretty much unity on this, except for a couple of key people like William Miller and Himes and a couple of people. But mostly it's everyone's accepting this. Now when Miller says this is crazy, what's Miller's alternative? What's Miller's alternative to Snow's message? Snow says, this is the midnight cry, this is it, October 22nd. What's Miller's message?
His original understanding of the midnight cry is correct.
His original one, I'm going to suggest he doesn't have a message. He just says, business as usual, the boring messages of Joseph Bates. He has nothing new to offer. Are you okay with that version of history, that interpretation? Yeah? Snow has this cutting edge new message and Miller has no message. Are we okay with that? Does anybody else have any messages? No one. So I'm saying in the Millerite history there's only one message. No other messages, no competing voices. I want to say it that way. No voices that compete against Samuel Snow. Are we okay with that? Is that a fair representation of that history? Brother Rogers, agree with that? Okay, so midnight cry is the loud cry. So here we are in 1850. So this is the question that someone asked. And now we want to read 13MR. If you haven't already read it. I saw that the chart making business was all wrong. Why you smile, Brother Robert? Oh, she made you smile? She says no. Okay, so what's that teaching us in that first sentence? My brother, what's that teaching us in that first sentence?
I think business was wrong.
Sorry?
Business.
Okay, not that.
I think there's a business running and people are producing charts.
Okay, so there's a lot of charts. So what's that teaching us?
They are very opinions.
Sorry?
They are very opinions.
They're valid.
Valid. Unless you
Varying.
Oh, varying. There's varying opinions. Various opinions on what? So to answer that question, what is the what in that sentence? What is the what? What is the what? He says there's varying opinions, and I said varying opinions on what?
On chart, there were many people making charts.
On charts. So what is the chart? What did we just define the chart as? The loud cry. So in this history here, when you have the loud cry message, what do you have? You have varying, I'm going to change it to competing voices or cries. So you don't have one loud cry message, you have many. You have many voices. Which one's right?
Nichols one.
How do we know Nichols one is right? My sister, How do we know Nichols' one is right?
Because it has approved by God.
Because it's already been approved by God. I agree with that. Anybody want to state that in a slightly different way? Instead of saying it's approved by God.
It was a fulfillment above all.
Do you know it's Habakkuk 2? Sister White? Who says Sister White? Sister White says it's Habakkuk 2?
Yes.
You show me the passage then. Find that for me. So it's a fulfillment of prophecy. And my sister said God approved of it. My brother?
Question?
I'm not sure. The question is. So the question is. Let me think of what the question is. You've got this chart. We've got the 1850 chart is the loud cry, and now we've got other charts. We've got other loud cries. So you've got 5 loud cries, maybe more than that. How do you know which is the correct loud cry?
So you cannot base the nature as you see them.
You see them,
Yeah, then you can give judgment that this is wrong and this is right.
but they all look beautiful. They all look nice.
The whole night you can know that this is wrong.
Based upon what?
Based upon what has been written on it.
So what was written on that chart here that you can say this is the midnight cry? Tell me what's on that chart that says midnight cry or loud cry. So you can't tell if that's the correct one then. You're stuck now. That was the wrong one. We've tricked you all of these years. My brother at the back. How do you know which is the correct chart? Sorry?
And it contains all what they have been studying previously.
It contains everything that they've studied previously.
Knowing right now, or if I was a mirror.
That's a good question. Either one. Both. A and B.
So for me to know, at that point, I need to first go to the previous thing they have been teaching up to that point. Then I can conclude.
Okay, I think that's similar to what my brother said, that it's the culmination of all the truths that they've learned. I think that's what you're saying. Okay? My brother, here at the front.
Me, I would just say that it is the one that God approves, of which it is the one that Nichols draws and puts in.
So that's what my sister said, the one God approves of, which I think is okay, but I just want to say it in a slightly different way.
Yeah, Sister White says that the other side of the color is quite the mind, but the rest of the time, the picture there were like one of the fear. They were not able to tell you to stay with the
Okay, let's read this and you tell me what this means. I'm going to skip a couple of sentences. I saw, this is like the third or fourth sentence, I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart by Brother Nichols. I saw that God was in the publishment of the chart. What does that mean? Because I think it's slightly different that God approves.
God was leading.
God was leading. So I want us to see that God was leading in this chart. How do we know God was leading in this chart? She says.
The minute. I'm thinking of what we read from Logbook. They've been told to publish.
So they've been told to publish. We have a vision from Loughborough's work. I don't know what the other charts are doing, if they're giving that correct information or not, because I don't have visibility of what those other charts look like, except that she says they look ugly.
Because it was written in the Bible, as in Habakkuk, that there should be the public.
Okay, have you found that Habakkuk quote?
2 or 3 paragraph 1.
Sorry?
By the math, 2 or 3 paragraph
5 MR, paragraph 1. So, just before we go there, I want to suggest, because we're going to come back to 13 MR, I want to suggest, when it says that God was in the publishment of the chart, God tells her to actually produce a new chart. So I can't remember where that quote is, maybe someone can find it. There's a stronger statement that God tells her to produce this new chart. So she's in the design, she's involved in the design of this new chart with some kind of direct revelation from God. I don't know how close God was involved in that work about the placement of all the information and what the figures should look like. But this is, we've got F.D. Nichols on there, but this is Alan White's chart. And this one is whose chart? It's not Himes' chart. This is Fitch's chart. Fitch sat down one day, I think someone helped him, Paulus Hale. So they sit down together and they say, let's produce a chart, because there have been other charts before, and they work out the picture work. I don't know who does the artwork for them, if they do it themselves, but they produce that chart. Then Himes is the publisher. It's the same as Nichols. Nichols is the publisher. The person who designs and creates that chart really is Ellen White, and she's doing it under divine instruction. So I want to say that the way you know which chart is the correct chart, it's the one that God has authorized. It's the one that God has directed and mandated. If we're okay with that. That's why God would approve of it. We're going to come back to 13 MR. We're just going to read 5 MR.
Before you go from 13 MR, the next sentence says, I saw there was a prophecy of this chart in the Bible.
Yes.
In 13 MR. But if you go to 2 or 3 paragraph 1, she will tell you it's Habakkuk. She will use the language of Habakkuk, but we want to go to Habakkuk.
So, in 13 MR it says there's a prophecy about this in the Bible, and we already know there's a prophecy about this chart in the Bible. We already know this is Habakkuk 2, don't we? Yeah? She tells us that in Great Controversy. So 5 MR 202 or 203?
It begins with 202 paragraph.
Okay, we'll check where we want to begin this. Okay, so I'll go to 202.4. God showed me the necessity of getting out a chart. I saw that it was needed, and that the truth made plain upon tables would affect much and would cause souls to come to the knowledge of the truth. This is written in 1850, and it's a letter dated November the 1st. So the Lord must have shown her this a little bit before this. So this is the passage that I was thinking about when it says, God showed me the necessity of getting out a chart. So God's saying you need to produce a chart. So He's involved in this chart. Then I'm going to read the next part. Give me a second. On our return to Brother Nichols, the Lord gave me a vision and showed me that the truth must be made plain upon tables, and it would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message. And so a message with the two former being made plain on tables. I also saw it was necessary for the paper to be published as for the messengers to go. For the messengers need a paper to carry with them containing present truth to put in the hands of those who hear and then the truth would not fade from the mind, and that the paper would go where the messengers could not. Other things I saw, which will appear in the paper. So we can get a number of things from that. So the first thing, and someone just commented upon this a moment ago, she says, I also saw that it was necessary for the paper to be published, as for messengers to go out. So we don't just need missionaries, we need some paper for them. And she's shown this in this vision, and we read that from Loughborough's work. She has this vision, and that was, I think, November 18th, when she has that vision. In Loughborough's work, 1848. I'm not saying this is the same vision, but it's talking about the same thing. So she's going to connect the paper with the production of the 1850 chart, which is the connection that we made yesterday, or maybe the day before. So I want to read this again. So God showed her to get a chart out. I saw that it was needed, and that truth made plain upon tables would affect much and would cause souls to come to a knowledge of the truth. They went to Nichols' house, and the Lord gave her a vision and showed her that the truth must be made plain upon tables, and it would cause many to decide for the truth by the third angel's message, with the two former being made plain upon tables. So we'll stop there. My brother, how do you read that passage that we've just read? Yeah.
Understanding that they went to Nichols' place.
Sorry?
They went to Brother Nichols' place.
Yes.
And then Sister White went into a vision. And while in the vision, Nichols was writing what Sister White was saying while in the vision.
And what was that? What is she saying? What is she saying?
What is Christ saying?
A bit more.
A bit more. Christ is saying that a church will be produced based on what they were teaching.
A chart must be produced based upon what they were teaching. My brother?
According to this quotation, saying that the church that they are going to produce is going to be the part of the vision.
Okay, so stop there. So we've got a chart, and this is the 1850 chart, and you're saying this is the third angel's message.
With the two form of being made plain up on tables. So to tell us the two form of the first and the second vision. That is the other chart.
So you've got the 1843 chart, and you've got the first and second angel's messages.
Yes. And that the carrying of this chart to different places by the messengers would make now is going to be a test for those who are going to be given this, because many are going to decide for the truth.
Okay? So this picture work is what you think that she's saying here. Okay, so we went to this passage because I asked Brother Robert to give me a Spirit of Prophecy quote that says that the 1850 chart was a fulfillment of Habakkuk 2. In 13MR, it says it was a fulfillment of a prophecy that was in the Bible. So we want to know what prophecy it is. We know it's a prophecy. And then he says it's 5MR. And he doesn't say Habakkuk 2. But in both paragraphs, 202 and 203, it says, I saw it was needed, and the truth made plain upon tables. So it mentions upon tables, which is Habakkuk 2 language. And then in the second paragraph, it says, the Lord gave me a vision and showed me that the truth must be made plain upon tables. So it's virtually identical to the previous paragraph. And it's that phrase there, that it must be made plain upon tables, which is a reference back to Habakkuk 2. Is that the logic? Okay? So we'll just carry on for a little bit longer. We still got memory, battery space. So we're okay with that it's a fulfillment of prophecy. So I want to comment on this 5MR a bit more, because I want to understand a little bit more about this. But before we comment back on this one, I want us to just go back to 13MR, and I just want to make the point about 13MR. You've got multiple charts.
There was something I was seeing in this 5MR, the last bit of it.
We'll come back to 5MR in a moment, because I want to discuss this as well. I want to discuss more about 5MR. But I just want to make the point about 13MR. 13MR, there's multiple charts. One of them has been directed by God, and it's a fulfillment of prophecy. And the reason we know that is not only does God approve of this chart, God was in the publishing of this chart. He was involved in its creation. So that's how you would know. So if we could say it this way, we know which chart is correct because it depends who's backing the chart. What does that mean, Brother Robert? What does that mean? If you agreed with what I just said, or if you understood what I said, you don't have to agree with it. How do you know which chart is right?
Because it has the backing of God.
Because it has the backing of God. And who told you which chart God backs?
The prophet of the year.
The prophet. So one chart has got the prophet's backing, and all the other ones don't. That's how you know. The one that Ellen White says, I'm going for this chart. And when she says this chart, whose chart is that? When she says this one? Us. Her. Yeah, this is my chart. So that's a bold statement. She says, it's my chart or no chart. We can say that. That's how you know. But what I want us to see is that there are competing charts. Now, let's make an application. We're in 2018, and all of us know, or believe, or have heard, that we're in the midnight cry message. So we have a midnight cry message, and we know that there are competing voices or competing messages. People aren't agreeing with this message. They want to add or take away from or adjust or tweak or do something with. And people have asked, I thought here at the midnight cry, how many messages were there? One, and it was a unifying message. And the only dissenting voice that you have is a voice that says, I don't agree with your message, but I don't even have a message, which isn't really much of a disagreement. So you only have one message. But in this history, you don't. You have multiple loud cry messages, all people doing their own different thing. So when we come to our line, what are we supposed to do? Line upon line. We have to combine them. So we're going to see a component right now where we've got competing voices or dissension of the midnight cry message. Can we see that? Or can we not see that? Or what I'm saying? Yeah? So the problem with this is, if I'm Ellen White and I say this 1850 chart is the right one, by the way, what are you going to say? Sorry?
I don't know how to say.
Okay, so I think I know what you're going to say, or approximately. You would say that because it's your chart. It's called self-promotion.
Bearing his own witness.
Bearing your own witness. So, I'm not sure why you're smiling, Brother Robert. Why are you smiling for? Oh, she's making you smile. Keeps on blaming you. I don't know what's going on there. I don't believe that. Some people deny it. Every time I say something, he's looking at me smiling, not looking at his sister. So it's not correct. It's not true. So you have to decide if this looks like self-promotion or me promoting Sister Tess, or me promoting myself, or whatever it is when I make this application, because either it's valid or it's not. But I wanted to just point that out to you with all the pregnant thoughts that are associated with it, because it just sounds like, yeah, this is, you would say that because you were involved in it in some shape or form. And I'm saying, okay, everybody can believe what they want, but it's not true. We all try and be objective. This is a class, and I really do try to be objective. And I'm saying that we have a line of prophecy, line of history, that shows us when the midnight cry comes, that there's going to be competing voices. And let's read what she says about that. I saw that the chart making business was all wrong. By the way, today it's not chart making business. What business are we in? Time setting. So let me say that to you. I saw that the time setting business was all wrong. And you know, I only smile or even laugh because I don't want to be seen to be attacking anyone. So I want us to all be relaxed about it. But think about the seriousness of that. This movement has been given permission, if you can recognise it, by God, to time set. If now we've got permission, everyone's saying, let's get into the time setting business. And if this is a correct application, she's saying it's all wrong to do this time setting business. It originated with Brother Rhodes and was followed out by Brother Case. Means has been spent in making charts and forming uncouth, disgusting images. Brother Rogers, let me ask you a different question. My brother, what does uncouth mean?
Something that is not pleasing.
Something that is not pleasing.
Disgusting.
Sorry?
Disgusting.
Disgusting? I don't want to use the word disgusting because it's already used. Brother Wilson? Uncouth. Uncivilized?
Unrefined.
By now we should have had a dictionary definition out. Someone's going to give us one.
Odd, strange, unusual.
Odd, strange, unusual. Odd, strange and unusual. So money had been spent in making charts that were odd, strange, unusual and disgusting. And it had images. Brother Rogers, make an application for us on that, just that little piece. Odd, uncouth, disgusting images.
Okay. So we are saying she's referring this to the chart making business. They're using these charts to form and quote or strange images to represent angels and the glorious Jesus. The angels and the glorious Jesus will be the prophetic light.
So, I should have finished the sentence and I didn't. Representing angels and the glorious Jesus. So the last two Sabbaths, I've shown that parables equal Jesus, equals the everlasting gospel, equals line upon line methodology. So those lines are a symbol of Jesus, and it's angels. We know it's angels because it's the first, second and third angel. Carry on.
So when I'm going to approach in the application, I'm going to take because like you have shown parables of Jesus, but Jesus is the everlasting gospel, but the everlasting gospel are angels. So Jesus and the angels is the prophetic light that we are given. So people are going to use this time-setting business to represent our prophetic light.
So when I do this, and I say X, and I say 2022, no one's doing the 22, are they yet? Are they? No? I haven't heard of 22, so that's why I put the 22, because I don't think we've done one yet. So I've got X and 22, and I say this is 666 years. What does that look like? Uncouth and disgusting. This is uncouth and disgusting to do this kind of stuff. So, I want us to seriously consider the importance of what I'm suggesting. Here, there's only one message. Everyone else has been silenced. There is no other message. The best that someone can do, which is Miller, he just says, "Oh, I don't like what you're doing, stop it." That's the best he can do. In fact, he does worse than that, but he hasn't got anything. He's been silenced here. Miller is not an individual person here at the end of the world, so that we will understand. I'm not talking about any individual. If we say that 1850 was public evangelism, it's the loud cry, then these two are parallel events. Here, it's the chart that is the loud cry, it's the symbol, it's the thing that's being lifted up. We read in 13MR, there are multiple charts, therefore multiple messages. And if we made an application today, we have not produced any charts. But we're now in the business of time setting. And if you read through this passage, it can't be a coincidence, I don't think. You tell me what you think, that it says, means have been spent in making charts, forming uncouth, disgusting images to represent angels and the glorious Jesus. And if we weren't sure about it before, we've just spent 2 Sabbaths. I think all of the presentations that have been done, not just the ones that I mentioned, to show that the reform lines are a representation of Jesus. And we know that the reform lines are the everlasting gospel, and the everlasting gospel is given by 3 angels in Revelation 14. That the language that she's using is exactly what we're doing now in our generation as its fulfillment. So when she says these images, you know, if we had done this 10, 15 years ago and it said images, what would we have been thinking about? We would have had no ideas, because we weren't using whiteboards. We weren't doing this kind of work. We would never have imagined that this whole business that we're doing is all about images. It's all there. So I'm suggesting it's a fulfillment of prophecy. And people who are doing disgusting things like this, it's displeasing to God. Especially when we have the chart that he was involved in the production of. So that's how I'm reading it. I don't mean to sound like I'm preaching or anything, but I want to know what you think about the application that I'm suggesting. Sister Emma, you had your hand up.
I'm looking at what she's criticising and saying, can you make a case that they don't have a message either? Because she's not criticising the message, she's criticising the pictures. So I'm not disagreeing with what you said about applying it to that line there, but I'm thinking she's only criticising the images, so the pictures. So is it possible there weren't multiple messages as such? There's the same message, but they're illustrated with these uncouth pictures. So in that sense, they don't really have a message, they don't have a different message, it's the same message, but they're just messing it up. So can you then relate that to the midnight cry, that the other people don't really have a message?
So what I'm suggesting is, if chart equals the loud cry equals the message, when you produce a chart, that chart becomes a symbol of the midnight cry message. So, am I saying what you're agreeing with, or you disagree?
I understand that. I'm just saying, can we make an application that the message is, they don't really have another message, they've just messed with the images, the pictures. So in that sense, there aren't multiple people with lots of different messages, they've messed with the pictures, and they're messing it up, but they've got this, in essence, they're basing it on the same message, it's the same message, so it's a different way of looking at it.
When you say the same message, what is the message? I want to put message equals what?
All the information on the chart, not the picture. So it's just another version.
Well, I don't know what their charts look like, so I can't comment on that.
No, and I'm just making the point that to be anything to be criticised.
What's the purpose of all of this information? What is it? This is the cry that goes out to the world, isn't it? So whatever you're doing, the end creation of all of that is the midnight cry message. It's the message that you believe needs to go to the world. That's why they're producing the chart. They're saying, my picture work is what should be going to the world. And someone says, no, mine is what should go to the world. Another white says, no, it's this one that should go to the world.
Yeah, all I'm just thinking is the picture work and the writing.
Oh, I'm not arguing about the literal thing here. But I'm asking, what does an image symbolize to us? What does it mean to us? Because are you trying to say my picture of an angel is uncouth?
No, I'm into your fact that you're making the image, the fact that they're doing a different line in a sense. But all I was going back to the fact, when you said the midnight cry in the Millerite history, you said that the others, although they disagree, like Millerite people, they don't really have a message. That's the only message really that there is there, is Snow's message. And I'm saying these other people who are doing these other charts, they don't have another message. They've just got different pictures on it. So I'm wondering if we can do that.
What's the purpose of those pictures?
It's to illustrate the message. So it's intimately connected, but because she's not criticising the words, the actual message, I was wondering if we can make a distinction and say, okay, so they're messing it up, but it's not that they've got multiple voices with different messages. On the code of one level, say they're different messages, they've got different pictures, but the actual writing is all the same.
I don't know that. I have no idea what those, yeah, but you can't argue what you don't know.
No, it's only because she's just criticising the pictures, that's all it is. That's all I'm picking up.
I'm okay with that. When I say they've got different messages, I don't mean they've got a message about the third advent or something. All of those charts are being designed to give the third angel's message. That's their purpose. And she says, your version of the third angel's message is wrong. Period. It's disgusting. It's not right. And all I'm saying is, when I draw an image like this, when we make an application, that this is all wrong as well. It's not what we should be doing. We should all be rallying behind the 1850 chart, not trying to do our own thing.
Okay, I have a question. So we are applying the 1850 chart in our time. And we know the light that has been opened is until midnight next year, November 9/11. So when we go and do and try to go ahead to say this will be the time for Sunday law and other, are we forming uncouth images?
Uncouth images?
Yes.
I don't know. You tell me what you think.
When we have stated that one, we have seen people who are going ahead because God was leading them to come up with that chart now, and we are doing now application because we are not making chart now.
You're asking the question that I'm asking, so you can't ask it to me. So that's why I'm asking the questions. You need to give me the answers, Brother Robert. Then my brother. Then my brother.
Okay. So in this history, there are varying messages, charts, and what makes them to know which chart is correct is because they have a prophet who they can rely on. So in our history, what will help us to know that this is the chart that we need, that is correct.
Okay, so if I draw a picture work like this one, how do you know this one's correct and this one's not? How do you know this looks beautiful and this looks ugly? That's your question. So before we answer that question, do you agree with the logic and the methodology that we would have competing ones and that they will all be wrong and God would not be pleased? He said it's all wrong to do all of this stuff. Therefore, all that money should be stopped being spent doing that, and everybody should be getting behind that chart. So, I don't know if you agree with all that logic. So if you agree with that logic, then the next question is, well, how do you know which one is the correct one? So that's a question that we'd have to explore. How do we know which is the right one? But should we expect multiple messages? And if we should, we would already know that they're all wrong except one. So I want to get to that stage before we'd answer the second question.
Then just to comment on what Sister Emma was speaking on. I think this quotation 5 and Mark page 2 or 3, but one around that area. Sister White says that I'm understanding her point that probably these guys had the same message, but they were just, messing up with the images. But what was needed for the third angel's message to have an effect on people is the correct arrangement on those charts. So when Sister White is going to say that the 1850 chart, God was in the publishment of the 1850 chart, what she's saying is that this chart has the correct arrangement, which has the ability to awaken people and call their attention to the third angel's message. So in essence, when we are making an application in our history, I will take the chart and the arrangement to be the message.
My brother?
I don't agree that they had the same message. But though they had the same topic of the message, but when we check the content, not the same. Because when I read 13 MR 360.
Before you read, what is the topic? You said same topic.
The third angel's message.
Okay, so you agree to the third angel.
Yeah. Here Henry shows something. He says, I saw that if the means that has been wasted in getting out charts had been spent in getting out the truth. That word, the truth, means something. Means that those who were spending in other charts, means that they didn't have the truth. Clear before the brethren in publishing tracts, it would have been much good and saved souls. I saw that the chart making business has spread like a fever.
Which paragraph is that?
Paragraph 360, paragraph 1, 13 MR.
Last sentence.
Last paragraph.
Last paragraph, sorry. The chart making business has spread like wildfire, like wild fever.
I saw that if
yes. I saw that if the means had been wasted in getting out charts, had been spent in getting out the truth, clear before the brethren in publishing tracts, etc., it would have done much good and saved souls. I saw that the chart making business has spread like the fever. So they're all doing the third angel's message, but they're all doing it in their own different way. My brother? That's true.
In the same case, we want us to look at it from the study of parables. If we read from 13 Mark 59.3.
59?
Yeah,
Oh, 359.3.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw that the charts ordered by God struck the mind favorably, even without understanding. There is something light, lovely, and heavenly in the presentation of the angels on the chart. The mind is almost imperceptibly led to God and heaven. But the other charts that have been gotten up disgust the mind and cause the mind to dwell more on the earth and heaven. So with the symbolism used, we saw that a good parable or a perfect parable connects the natural to the spiritual. But with these charts that are here, they don't achieve that. They are trying to represent the heavenly and to give the earthly to the heavenly thoughts, but there is a disparity in that.
Oh, I like that comment. I like that thought. So if I understand what my brother's telling me, if I'm understanding, I'm going to try and re-say what you said, is that the proper chart is going to have parables working correctly because they're going to connect the earthly to the heavenly. And if we bring that to our own line, because we're producing these lines, then the correct message, the correct line, if we're going to go use that argument, is going to have correct waymarks, it's going to use correct methodology, it's going to be the correct parable. So the ones that are uncouth, they're going to have mistakes in them. They're going to give you wrong information, and I'm going to suggest they're going to give you wrong dates with wrong events. And if you do that, you're not going to connect the earthly with the heavenly correctly, which means, I think Sister Emma said this, wrong doctrine ensures that you'll never have a correct or properly developed character, which means that you don't become a living parable. So I like that thought, Brother Rogers.
I want to comment on the point Sister Emma was making on paragraph 1. When we come to the issue of the chart, when we speak of the 1850 chart, I don't think we are speaking about the canvas. If the canvas was in that history, it is what is illustrated on that chart. So I'm saying the images that are on the 1850 chart become a symbol of the message they're giving in that history. And these are the guys also have the images, which she's calling uncouth images of Jesus and angels. So it will mean it's a totally different message from what is on the 1850 chart. Yeah. So she's not so much like when we bring to the end of time, we are saying the 1850 is a symbol of the loud cry, which is the message on that chart that becomes a symbol of the loud cry. Now I'm seeing if we want to apply it on the context of time setting, then that will directly affect the movement, because I don't think there is any one time setting outside this movement. That's going to directly affect us. But we have two lines there to combine. We have the minor cry in Millerite history, and we have the loud cry in that history. When we bring them to the end of time, they will teach two different themes. Then I wanted to react to what my brother was saying, like, if like we have 2019 is what like Sister Tessa identified. What about predicting a future event? I'm saying it is not wrong, but it so much depends on the methodology used to arrive at that event. Because we are calling that unquote. If that is unquote, then there is a correct one, like the 1850 chart. And that's what I think we have been laboring to show from the study of parables. That when Christ was giving his message, he would create a story. And in this story, like when we brought to the end of time, at least one of those events should be in the past history, and one should at least connect with our history. But you cannot use two events, end from beginning. We said we have done that in times past and it has worked, but it's not the correct way. So I think that's why it becomes uncooked. So if we want to predict future events, we must have a solid story developed that can show a pattern that can lead us to predicting events.
Yeah. So if you go to the quotation we agreed is that what he says is that there are some charts that are being published which she says they are wrong, and she mentions Brother Rhodes and Brother Kesas, the ones who have been making these charts. But if you go to paragraph 3 of 13 Emmanuel 359, the last sentence, it says, I saw that the charts had for days and weeks occupied Brother Kes's mind, when he should have been seeking heavenly wisdom from God and should have been growing in graces of the Spirit and the knowledge of truth. So like you can see, she's trying to say like the charts now she is labeling to make they doesn't have truth. She makes that contrast. So it means that the 1850 chart is the only chart with truth. So it means that the other chart they don't have the truth. So it means to be this.
So I have a point, as a pointing. So I just want to identify something. Then we continue. I think the other day we were looking for a quotation to identify them here. The church goes into an audition commission in 1850.
Here.
Yeah, I think I got 5 March 204 paragraph 3. 5 March 204 paragraph 3.
So I'm just going to read from, we spoke about the Laodicean condition beginning in 1850, and I asked for a proof text. We didn't read this one, but I put Early Writings 107.2, which is the 1852 statement, and because I was saying the earliest one I found was 1857 from Testimonies to Church Volume 1, so you can find an early one in Early Writings, and there's another one in 5MR. I saw if Israel moved steadily along, going according to Bible order, they would be as terrible as an army with banners. Said the angel, should any tarry that have the truth and can give an explanation of it from the word of God? No, they must move quick, they must go quickly. Then I saw Brother Bates that he must buckle on the armour. Said the angel, dost thou expect to be free from trials? Fight the good fight. The angel of God will go before thee, and some souls will be benefited and receive the truth. Then I saw Laodiceans. They will make a mighty effort. Will they get the victory? One who has the truth will chase 1,000, and 2 will put 10,000 to flight. They are coming to conclusions that bring them into close quarters, and they cannot tell where they will be themselves, for they are lost in the foggy, terrible fear that takes hold of them. Anguish of spirit will seize them. Dare they admit that the door is shut? The sin against the Holy Ghost was to ascribe to Satan what belongs to God, or what the Holy Ghost has done. They said the shut door was of the devil, and now admit it is against their own lives. They should die the death. Look ye at the pattern, follow him, for he is meek and lowly in heart. Shut your eyes to everything but the present truth. MS 11, 1850. December the 25th, Christmas Day. So she says, then I saw Laodiceans. They will make a mighty effort. Will they get the victory? So you can mark Laodiceans here in 1850. So
does it really say that that's where they become Laodicea, or is it saying that these Laodiceans will do something? The way I hear that quotation, it's not really saying that they become Laodiceans.
It's just saying
they will do something.
Laodiceans will do something.
So when did they become Laodiceans?
Okay, so we'll discuss that in tomorrow's class. You had your hand up about something else?
I had a quotation, but I lost it, and I was trying to react to that Laodicea because they had another quote that has a date before 1850, but I lost that.
If you go to we'll save it because we might be able to find it. Any other comments before we close? So I want us to think about whether or not we can make this application of 1850, bring it into our own history, and say that we should now have a singular midnight cry message, and we haven't discussed which message that is, and how to prove which message it is. I guess the proof would be, in that history, the prophet had created the chart, and we don't have a prophet in that capacity, but we'd have to go to methodology, I presume, to work that out.
So
you found it?
I got what I wanted to comment on. You go to the in a man, page 360, paragraph 1. On the same story. So my comment before I read the quotation is that this new chart making business that comes in becomes a distraction to the people, in that they will not be able to do the work that the 1850 chart was designed to do because there are other distractions that are occupying their mind. And if we come into our time, I would expect that this midnight cry message has been given by the Lord to perform a certain purpose. What we've been saying is to call the last priests that are remaining within Adventism, and probably will get distracted by this new church. And what is making me say that is this quotation says, I saw that if the means that has been wasted in getting out church had been spent in getting out the truth clear before the brethren in publishing tracts, it would have done much good and saved souls. I saw that the church making business has spread like the fever. So this is now becoming a distraction. Souls are supposed to be saved by the means in producing the 1850 church, but it's being occupied in producing other church. Probably the means in our time is not producing church, but it's the occupation that our minds, get into. So all these church making business, whatever we shall apply it into our time to be, it's going to be a distraction, and it is going to make us not perform the work that the midnight cry message has been designed to.
Question. I'm getting lost somewhere, but maybe you can make it clear. Those who are making the uncooked charts, are they part of the Adventists who should be preaching the third angel message, or are they from other places?
My understanding is they're part of the movement. That's how I understand that to be, that they're part of they've accepted the third angel's message, and I think the charts that they're producing are charts about the third angel's message. But everyone wants to make a name for themselves.
In our time application, we should expect this is coming from the movement.
Yes, and I think as Brother Robert said, I'm saying the only people who are ever going to give a loud cry or a midnight cry is Ephesus, is the movement. The church at large never is going to do that, even though they dream about it. And if we if we believe that we're in 2018 and we're giving the midnight cry message, we know that the engine, the thing that's driving this midnight cry message is not the production of these types of charts, it's the production of these types of charts. And what we're really discussing is time setting. It's time setting that's going to be used to make something of any validity. Because we're not just saying in the future something's going to happen, we're marking a time period for that. So it's the time setting. And I think he said we're the only movement that would ever dare time set, because the church would never time set. You might get some fanatics who would do that, but they don't have a methodology behind them. I mean, they do worse things than this. Their methodology is crazy about time setting. So I think it is an application about this movement.
I still have another thought from the manuscript, release page 2.3, where she says that we told him, Brother H, that should be Brother Hod's, of some of his errors in the past, that the 1335 days were ended. And he says that, and numerous other errors of his. So you see, when this Brother Hod's had been doing some time setting, but now the problem is that errors of the past. So can we be able to identify these past, maybe it can be having some connection with what we are discussing?
That's not the same brother. The other one was false, not false.
This is Brother H is not false.
The other one was Brother Rose, so this is not the same brother.
But I think H is a representation of false.
Rose. The other one was Rose. Not him. So this is not the part.
We're going to close the class because we're way past over time. You were reading from 5MR, I think.
Yeah.
When they do H, what they do is in any article they do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, and each letter represents the first time an individual is being spoken about, and they just erase their name and just put H. So H would mean the fifth person, sixth person that she speaks about. It's not connected to the actual, that their surname begins with an H. So you could go back to the original and find that, I think. If it's a letter, you can find it. So let's close. We're past after time. Heavenly Father, we thank you for your watch care, your goodness over your people. We ask and pray that you would give us the blessing that we need. Lord, may we meditate upon the discussion of this class, and if there's any truth in it, may we see the import of what you are trying to show us here at the end of the world. May each of us learn the lessons that we need to learn so that we might not become like these people who are in the chart making business, desiring to make a name for themselves or whatever their motivation was, which ends up being a distraction to the necessary work that you have given your people to do. We ask for a blessing in Jesus' name. Amen.